Hello, I'm Stephen Boyle from Easons.com and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Sabrina Ghayour. Her new book, Sirocco, has just been published by Mitchell Beasley. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolutely beautiful book, full of kind of Middle Eastern inspired recipes. Tell us a little bit about Sirocco.
So Sirocco is quite different to my first book, I feel, in the sense that there are no authentic Middle Eastern recipes. It very much represents how I cook at home.
Okay.
And perhaps because I have an exposure to a Middle Eastern pantry or ingredients that are perceived as Middle Eastern, I use them quite confidently to create, pastas and pies and all different things, not necessarily just Middle Eastern food.
Yeah.
And what I've done is kind of fused simple ingredients like, let's say, root vegetables and kind of said vegetables or meats that aren't typically very Middle Eastern, like pork and things like that. I just find ways of infusing a little bit of kind of spice cupboard ingredients and a little bit of pantry magic into them to just lift something, elevate it a little bit. It's definitely not sort of improving upon classic recipes, in any way, but it's really simple and fresh and delicious food in sort of short amounts of time, because that's how I cook at home.
Yeah, so very simple and very accessible.
Yes, and very changeable with ingredients, and very kind of like, if you don't have this, you can leave that. If you don't have this, use something else, because that's always going to be the kind of cook that I am.
Very good. Whenever we talk to chefs and kind of cooks about their cooking, they always mention how from kind of a young age and their family food is always very important. Was that the same for yourself?
I'd like to say food was very important, but whether it's cooked for me is another story. I didn't grow up in the typical Middle Eastern household with the mum and the gran in the kitchen doing everything. I'm self-taught.
Okay.
So what it has sort of shown me is how easy it is to kind of learn this food, because I had to learn from scratch, albeit I had a little bit of kind of insider knowledge about basic flavours. But for me, when you're trying to recreate something, you may as well not have any knowledge about it, because you are learning constantly. So it is, not so much the traditional family setup, but it's certainly, look what it made me do. It made me create all these things really confidently, because I had no interference in the kitchen and I wasn't batted out of the kitchen because, mum was busy or something.
You weren't inheriting a lot of recipes and... Yeah.
I wasn't. But I also, the great thing is, because then nobody else was really in the kitchen, nobody told me to get out and not do this and don't touch that. So I had free reign of my kitchen.
Brilliant.
And when you're a child, sometimes what's so much more confidence building than having someone show you something is just being given free reign safely, to create and cook and do things. And then you're never cooking with the, God, I hope they like it, what if they don't like it, does this work? You're just like, okay, cool, and you're doing your own thing. So I'm quite bold when combining flavours. I think my rule is always, if I like those ingredients and I put them together, the chances are I'll most likely like the dish.
Yeah. And where did you go from moving from, the kid who was experimenting in the kitchen and doing her own thing, to saying, oh, this is actually what I really want to do as a career and do it professionally?
Oh, I would love to have said that I really wanted to do that in my teens, and I think somewhere in the back of my mind, being a chef was probably, doing something with food was something I really wanted to do. But the reality is, when I was in my teens, it wasn't quite the big deal that it is to be in the food industry. It was at that time just a very, hard profession. It wasn't, there were no TV sort of celebrity chefs and all of these things. So I was kind of pushed into studying business, which was a total waste of time. And I should have, in all fairness, I didn't put my heart into it, and my grades reflected that. I should have stuck to food. But so I'm a late bloomer, career-wise in food. I didn't actually become a chef until I was in my mid-30s.
Wow, okay.
But I had always worked in the hospitality industry for years, and in restaurants, in events and marketing, and then just catered on the weekends and gave my friends cookery classes. So I was always busy and I was always cooking. So it wasn't terribly dishonest. And quite frankly, I started cooking when I was 6 and I took over in the house when I was 11. So I've cooked. And I still cook.
And in Ireland, we wouldn't have a huge tradition of kind of Middle Eastern cooking, so it'd be quite new to a lot of people. If you had to pick out some absolutely essential ingredients for, as you're saying, your pantry or in your cupboard to get going, what would be the ones that you would pick out?
You know, the simple truth is there are no essential ingredients, and that's what I really love about this kind of food, because it's not very difficult to champion. It makes me want to think, trust me, if you're not sure about Middle Eastern food, you're not sure if you like it, actually this book is far better for you to start with than, let's say, my first one, which is a lot more classic, even though it's fairly light and stuff. It's my recipes, none of them are dependent on core ingredients, because I mean, kind of like the basis of Irish cooking, it was what you had that went in it. That therefore affords you so much flexibility, and although we have these sort of, you know, wonderful traditional Irish recipes where you know what does go in something, what definitely doesn't go in something, Middle Eastern food is so much more about produce and climate, availability and economy, and you know, what could you afford to put in there. So there are no rules.
It's a bit more dynamic and a bit more changeable. And
totally changeable. And the wonderful thing is, whereas a lot of the cuisine in Europe really is heavily dictated by French disciplines and techniques, in the Middle East that doesn't fly. There are no culinary academies. You never tell someone's family how something must be cooked, and that, you know, every family has a different version of something, so anything goes. So if you're feeling like you want to mix it up a little bit, then I love pomegranate molasses, which is just concentrated pomegranate juice, but again, there are alternatives. I love za'atar, which is just wild thyme with toasted sesame seeds, so it's nothing offensive, especially to an Irish palate, nothing offensive there. And then sumac, which is just it's a little berry ground down that has a really nice citrus bite. But again, most of the ingredients are everyday familiar produce, mince, you know, different kinds of meats, feta cheeses. I mean, we all have feta cheese in the supermarkets, and to be honest, a lot of ingredients are already staples in most Irish supermarkets.
There you go. So that's Middle Eastern food demystified.
That's me. Poster child for that.
Hugely exotic. The other thing, because it's summertime almost. And one thing I was talking about earlier was mixing different flavours. So you're a big fan of mixing different types of fruit with different types of herbs. Tell me more about that, because it sounds great.
It sounds a little wacky. I'm not gonna lie. It does sound a little wacky, but the one thing that ancient Persia is very famous for is this tradition of combining meat, fruit, and nuts, because we produce so much dried fruit and nuts in Iran. It's one of our biggest exports, and pistachio, very sort of the king of nuts. And it's a tradition that has sort of gone all the way. It's left Persia and it went into Arab states, and you know, it pops up in India in Mughal Empire cooking, so dishes like biryani that will have meat and fruit and nuts layered into them, all the way through to North Africa, thanks to the Arab Crusades, of combining, you know, the tagine combinations. When we think tagine, we always know that there's some sort of dried fruit or a nut in there, borrowed from the produce and traditions of Persia. So it's funny because we do combine those, but then at the other hand, we hate sweet and sour. So we're a quirky lot. But it's nice, I think, with the right spicing, and sometimes not even spicing, sometimes just the right combinations. Meat does like a little bit of sweet something there, and it means you can then kind of make it a little bit more of an interesting dish by adding other ingredients in.
Fantastic. We love books at Eason's, and we always ask all our authors who come in, if you had a cookbook to recommend apart from your own, of course, what are your must-haves in your kitchen at home? Okay,
so I've always been a classics girl. I know a lot of authors choose these beautiful, rare books. You know, I'm still of the Jamies, I'm still of the Nigellas. I know if I'm feeling down and I want to eat a whole cake, I'm going Nigella on that, because that's a safe bet. And I've taken so much of my inspiration from, you know, Jamie got us cooking Thai curry when I didn't even know what green curry was when he started. So respect where respect is due. However, for an interesting book of lesser known things, I really enjoy Mamushka by Olya Hercules, which I know you have over here. It's Ukrainian, Russian, Armenian, Georgian Easton, and that for me is an education. So, but in an informal way. So I really like that book, and I also like Modern Preserver by Kylie Newton, which is just a very fresh, clean guide on pickling, preserving, and all those wonderful traditions that sadly big in the Middle East, but I didn't have the benefit of having been passed those traditions on. So it's interesting for me to learn from that.
Fantastic, plenty of really nice books to pick up. Sirocco, as you said, is available, as is Sabrina's beautiful first book, Persiana. Absolutely stunning books. Sabrina, thank you so much for coming in and seeing us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.